Visions are deeply woven into religious history. In the Bible, for instance, we find accounts of people falling into trance-like states and receiving vivid visions believed to be messages from God. Let's look at a couple of notable examples from the New Testament. In the book of Acts, chapter 10, the Apostle Peter experiences a dramatic vision while praying. The scene is around noon on a rooftop in Joppa. Peter is hungry as lunch is being prepared, and he prays and falls into a trance, indicating that he was awake but in an altered state of consciousness. Not a normal, fully alert state, but not fully asleep either. In this trance, Peter sees the sky opening up and something like a great sheet descend, containing all kinds of animals. Many of these animals are unclean by Jewish dietary law. Peter then hears a voice telling him, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." Surprised, he objects, saying that he has never eaten anything impure. The voice replies, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean," in Acts 10:15. This vision and dialogue repeat 3 times for emphasis, and then Peter snaps out of the trance perplexed. So what was going on here? On the surface, it's about food. But Peter soon realizes that it's really about people. Right after his visions, messengers arrive from a Gentile man named Cornelius, asking Peter to come and share the gospel. Peter, a Jewish Christian, had considered Gentiles and their food unclean, but the vision's message was that God had opened the way to all people. Peter later explains that the vision taught him he should not call anyone impure or unclean. In other words, the trance on the rooftop was a divine vision telling Peter that the old barriers were down. Non-Jews were welcome in the new faith, and even the old dietary restrictions no longer applied. This was a revelation based on real events in his waking life that transformed the early Christian movement, allowing it to spread beyond the Jewish community. For our purpose, let's note how Peter received this message. He was in prayer, likely quiet, receptive when he fell into the trance. The author makes a point of saying that this wasn't a regular dream, which happens, of course, in sleep, but a vision while awake. And so in that altered state, symbolic imagery, the sheet of animals, conveyed a meaning that Peter had to ponder. It's a classic example of a religious altered state brought on during meditation and prayer, containing vivid symbolic context and perceived communication from God. And in our second example, the Apostle Paul describes another kind of visionary experience, and a mysterious one. In Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, he writes about a man in Christ who 14 years earlier was caught up to the third heaven. Spoiler alert, he's talking about himself, but humbly in the third person. Paul says this person was snatched up to paradise and heard inexpressible things that no one is permitted to tell. Importantly, he adds, whether it was an experience in the body or apart from the body, he doesn't know. Only God knows. In plain terms, Paul isn't sure if he was physically taken somewhere or if it was purely a spiritual experience. He just knows it happened. The third heaven, in ancient Jewish cosmology, refers to the divine realm. The first heaven is the sky, the second is outer space, the third beyond that, essentially God's dwelling. The inner man. So Paul is claiming he was taken into God's realm and given glimpses of heavenly mysteries, but he doesn't describe what he saw in detail, only that he heard things that he can't repeat. This brief account is tantalizingly vague, but it's clear Paul sees it as a genuine revelation, validating his authority. He mentions it among his visions and revelations from the Lord. What's fascinating is Paul's emphasis is the experience was indescribable and felt out of body. He literally says that twice he can't tell if he was in his body or not. Modern researchers can recognize that this is a hallmark of an ecstatic trance. One commentary notes, no words better capture the trance state. Normal awareness of the body and surrounding fades, so afterwards the person may truly wonder if their spirit traveled elsewhere or if it was in a vision in the mind. Paul's uncertainty and awe convey how altered his consciousness was during the event. He experienced something real to him, yet completely outside of ordinary experience, so much so that normal categories, awake, asleep, mental, physical, completely broke down. Early Christians like Paul and Peter lived in a world where such visionary trances were accepted as a part of spiritual life. And later we'll get into Greek philosophy and how that influenced early Christianity, and we'll see more of why this type of spiritual practice was highly influential as a part of that daily life. And so both of these are excellent examples of altered states of consciousness in a religious context. Both cases, the person was in a state of intense focused prayer, deep reflection when the vision occurred. In Peter's case, he was awake in a trance. Paul doesn't even know which state he was in, which could imply he could have been awake in a trance, or it might have occurred during a dream, like ecstasy. In fact, through religious history, many visionaries and mystics have had similar experiences. An observer in the 1800s noted that countless figures from ancient Greece to philosophers and Christian saints, Sufi mystics, and shamans have all entered at times abnormal states of ecstasy as a routine part of their spiritual life. These trance states share common features. The person becomes oblivious to the outside world and experiences rich imagery or revelations, and afterwards might struggle to put it into words. The key takeaway is that the Bible recognized trances and visions as genuine modes of spiritual experiences rather than dismissing a vision as just an imagination. The text treats it as a legitimate channel for truth, which is the discernment that true visions align with God's message. Today, we might analyze Peter or Paul's state in neurological terms, but within the narrative that they exemplify how stillness, focus, and prayer can alter consciousness, bridging human and divine communication. These stories encourage us to see the liminal, dreamlike states not just as mindless potential, but meaningful and transformative.